Hello, everyone. I'm Lee Love, and welcome to Photo Mentor question and answer time. This is your first time here. This is where I get a chance to answer your questions that you've either submitted via email by sending them to Lee at photomentor.tv or by posting them on our Facebook page. If you're interested, I'd love to have you join us over on Photo Mentor TV and on Facebook. And anyway, this is my chance to answer questions that you may have about photography or even filmmaking or a number of things, Photoshop, Lightroom, whatever it is you want to talk about. And these questions are ones again that I've gotten from either emails or that I see them questions asked over and over again in different Facebook groups. So I will just compile a list of those questions and make an attempt to try and answer them the best I can. So today we are going to start with a question by Stacy Thomas. And Stacy asked a question which I've seen posted and asked many, many times in different forms. And the first one is, I wanted to be able to do lovely photos for friends and family and that I can put around my house. I have no idea where to start, what camera to buy, or what software I should use to touch up or Photoshop. So again, Stacy, this is an excellent question and one that I've seen many, many times. So I'm going to try and answer this the best I can. There's a couple of things you need to think about before purchasing a camera. So the first thing would be um, your budget. You got to figure out how much you're going to spend on a new camera. Now, look, we all want to get the best deal we can. We all want to get the most for our money, but it really doesn't matter in a way. I mean, when you are down at starting off and you get an entry level camera, you can actually spend $100 and see a huge difference in performance and features. Whereas at the high end, if you're spending $2,000 or $3,000, $100 may not make any difference whatsoever. You have to spend a lot more than that. So, but anyway, so the point is that the camera's not going to, doesn't really matter. It's not as much about the camera as it is about your photography. I'm going to talk about that in a little more detail as well. The second thing you need to think about is what subject matter, what kind of style, what kind of stuff do you like to photograph? Now, something that I hear quite often is when I will ask a new photographer, well, what do you like to photograph? To try and get a sense of, maybe solving their problem or what kind of lens to recommend. I often hear, oh, I like to photograph everything. Well, first of all, you can't photograph everything. You have to kind of, it's okay to be somewhat of a generalist, but at some point you have to kind of figure out what you love to shoot. And so when I hear that, that usually tells me they haven't been shooting very long and they're still trying to figure that out, which is fine. But you need to kind of understand. So Stacy asks, she wants to do photos of friends and family. So that to me would mean portraiture, people, that type of thing, as opposed to sports, for example. So why that's important is some cameras may have certain characteristics, frames per second, or certain kind of capabilities that you would want to have available for a specific kind of photography. Now, the nice thing is with an SLR with interchangeable lenses, the good thing is you can start off with a basic camera and a basic lens and change it. Let's say you want to get into macro photography and you want to photograph insects or flowers or whatever. You can change that lens, get a macro lens, and therefore be able to do macro, that kind of photography. So the nice thing is it's very versatile. Just the opposite, if you want to do sports, you can put a longer lens on and be able to go out and do soccer or football or something like that if you're doing kids sports, that type of thing. But the point is, you really kind of want to think about a little bit of what you're trying to do before you go out and buy the camera, because again, it will have some bearing on what model or what make you should get. Now, I'll show you a couple of models that I think you might want to look at. One of them is the Canon T7. The Canon T7 is a very good camera. It has a lot of capability. There's usually like a 1 or 2 lens kit you can get with it, and I would say it's a good camera to start with. I think it's around 20 megapixels, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around there. Actually, the sweet spot And cameras nowadays, anywhere from 18 to 24 tends to be about the cameras you're going to find. And the reason is the higher up in resolution you go, typically they're not as good, they're not as sensitive, what they call high ISO cameras. But anyway, I don't want to get into the weeds with this thing. So the Canon T7i is a good choice. The other camera you could look at that I recommend is the Nikon. That's the Nikon D3500. Now, again, these numbers I'm mentioning, and of course, prices are all U.S., so if you're outside the country, the models may change a little bit. I know Canon specifically will change the models a little bit. I think Nikons are pretty much the same no matter what. But the D3500 is a very good camera. Again, you can get it as a 2-lens kit. One thing about the Nikons I like is that they have a 5-year warranty on the lenses, where Canon only has 1. I'm not sure why that is, but that seems to be the case. So that's one area where the Nikon has some advantage. But anyway, either one, if you get a chance, go into a local photography store if you have one, hold them, touch them, get a chance to see how they feel, because the interaction that you have with the camera will have a lot to do with the kind of, how your photography. If it feels good in your hand and the menus are easy to navigate, then that's something that's going to be important to you. Okay, so the next thing I want to mention is the camera itself is not as important as you might think. Now, what I mean by that is, yes, the camera has some characteristics to it, the lenses, the sharpness, the low light performance, those kinds of things. But from an artistic standpoint, the camera has a lot less to do with it than you might think. And a phone can take amazing pictures if you're a good photographer. So what I encourage people to do, and I harp on this quite honestly, is to spend more time learning to see, learn to look, learn to see images, look for light, look for shapes. I can hand a phone to a great photographer and they'll take really good pictures. Now there's some limitations, of course, in the lenses and things like that. But I can and the opposite is, I could hand you a $50,000 Hasselblad medium format camera, and if you don't have the skills, you're just going to take mediocre or poor images. They may be really sharp, but they're still not going to be very good. So composition, framing, lighting are critical. Now, an example of that, I want to show you something here, if I can figure out what I did with them. Oh, here we go. So these are some pictures that were recently shot by a woman in, let's see, where is she from? I believe she is from the Philippines. Her name is Annalisa de Guzman. And these were shot with a phone, a Samsung phone of an aunt. Her DSLR camera apparently failed or had a problem. So she had a little macro lens she put on the front of her phone, and these were all shot with her phone. So they're just a great example of where, number one, being motivated, and number two, not letting the equipment hold you back. Not saying, oh, I can't do this because I don't have this camera or that camera. I think these are amazing photos no matter what they were shot with. And it just shows that sometimes having limitations can actually make you more creative. So anyway, so don't let the camera hold you back no matter what camera you have, even if you get a used camera, or a friend or a family member gives you a camera they're no longer using. Then work with what you have and work on your skills and your technique more so than worrying about the technology. Okay, the other thing is, she asked about software. Now, this is a big question. And I'm going to do another video just on software alone, but I'm going to touch on 2 products that you should be aware of and give you some kind of a sense of what you can do. Now, first of all, I should mention that almost all camera manufacturers will either come with, or you can download some free software. So Nikon, Canon, you can use those their products to do basic editing, but at some point you want to go a little more sophisticated than that. So one of the products that you're going to want to look at is something called Lightroom. Now, Lightroom is made by Adobe. It's a fantastic product. It it's really not just an editor, though. It's also a digital asset management system, meaning you can store images that will track keywords. You can find images. I probably have over 250,000 images in my Lightroom catalog. But the downside is it is a subscription model. So you have to pay for it every month. If you don't pay for it, at some point you change your mind, then you can no longer edit your own images. And I find that to be a problem. So it's one thing that kind of discouraged that people ask me, well, it's an alternative they want to be able to use instead of having to pay every month. Then I'll usually recommend something else. So the other product I would recommend you take a look at is a product called Luminar. Now, Luminar is, you buy it one time and you're done, and it has a phenomenal capability in that it's got some pretty fantastic capability to it, in that you can, like if you want to replace the sky or something like that, it's just a matter of clicking a button. There's a whole library of skies that come with it. You can manipulate that. Uses this artificial intelligence. It works really, really well. I'm surprised at how well it works. It also has facial retouching for portraiture. And the thing I like about it is it's not too excessive. It doesn't make you look like a doll. It just does a very basic some basic retouching. So anyway, this is a great product. It's again, it's called Luminar 4 is the current product, and I recommend you take a look at that. It'll really do a lot. You can see here, you can remove objects from the background. It will allow you. It does layering. The other nice thing to keep in mind is that it also will work with Lightroom or Photoshop. So if you already have those products, or you decide to use those products, and you want some of the features that Luminar has, when you install it, it will recognize that you have an Adobe Lightroom or Photoshop in there and install it as a plug-in, so you can actually use it in conjunction. So that's a very cool feature. So anyway, so those are two products that you should look at. I think you'll find that either one of those would be something that you can use down the road. And so one of the questions that I get asked, a lot of people say, well, do you have something simple or free? There are a number of pieces of software out there that are free, and you can certainly use them to do basic editing with, but here's the problem. In 6 months, you're going to surpass that capability, and you're going to do something more sophisticated. And now there's no room for growth because you've kind of maxed it out. So now you're going to have to start over again, learning a whole nother system. And that's why I recommend you might want to consider Luminar or Lightroom, because that gives you some room to grow. There's more, it can do more than you can do starting out, but yet you can grow into it, and it's something you could use for a longer period of time. So anyway, I appreciate you joining me. And again, we're going to be doing this on a regular basis. Probably do maybe some of these we'll do live. And if you have any questions, again, I ask that you, if you want, join the group. It's on Facebook. It's PhotoMentor.tv. Go ahead and join that. The second thing is, or you can send me an email directly to Lee, Lee, at PhotoMentor.tv if you have questions. I'll include them, do my best to include them in the next broadcast. Anyway, thanks very much. Appreciate you spending the time with us, and look forward to seeing you next time.